and Reckon with the Doctor. I am, of course, Chris White, and I am delighted to welcome this week's guest. In fact, I had to practice his name to make sure I got it right. And this gentleman, he is the founder and CEO of Selling Power Magazine. 40 years ago, he's been at this. He's the CEO of Sales 3.0 conferences. He's one of the founding members of the Sales Enablement Society, Mr. Gerhard Gschwandtner. Now, did I say that right?
Awesome. Great.
Fantastic.
You'll get an A+ for prononciation.
I've been practicing it.
Who is the doctor here, and who is going to get sued for malpractice?
Well, you know, I launched a business called the Demo Doctor.
I know.
So I've been playing on that a little bit, and let's hope that nobody is suing anybody at this point. And I still use the doctor, but I must admit, I'm starting to think that maybe I need to go elsewhere. Nonetheless, Gerhard, thank you so much for being here. I know how busy you are, and it is an absolute delight to have you. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you for asking. It reminds me, when you use the word doctor in connection to sales, there's also a telephone doctor, and she's Nancy Friedman. She's in St. Louis, Missouri, and she has been using that term for a long time, and she's well known for that.
Interesting. And what does the telephone doctor do? Fix telephones?
Fix telephone malpractice.
How about that?
Right.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Gerhard, there are so many things that you and I could talk about. Every time I talk to you, I am so overwhelmed by your positive attitude, your wealth of knowledge. I'm a tad intimidated by some of the people you have talked to over the years. Do you mind taking just a minute and just introducing yourself to the folks who might be on, who might not actually know your background and who you are?
Well, I started Selling Power Magazine on a shoestring budget in 1981, and it was not my intention to create a magazine. I built it up to the largest sales management publication in the country, and I was originally in sales training. I worked as an international sales training director for a company that had 41 subsidiaries in many different countries and 1,600 salespeople. And I had a team of about 25, and we designed sales training courses in 4 languages, and I speak only 3. So we have had a lot of good experts, and I enjoy sales training. Yeah. The reason I say that is I enjoy the fact that we can transform people's lives. And to me, that is a revelation that came to me when I was in an amateur theater group in Austria, where I watched how people transform through a script, through the performance, through the direction. And by delivering their lines right and playing their roles right, you're going to have a mesmerizing, magical play that transforms the audience. And I also learned how to direct. And that is even a greater challenge than acting. And later on, I realized that what I was doing with sales training is I helped salespeople impersonate a professional and make that transformation.
That is so, and I've never thought of it quite that way, but you're absolutely right. By the way, and I like to say, like, a sales presentation, it is a performance, right? It really is. And what I hear you saying is to get your words right, to get the approach right, to get the cadence down. And as a director, you're helping transform the actors. But in reality, the actors and really as salespeople, we're helping others transform their lives. Now, at what point in your career did you switch from sales and selling to training?
Well, the company gave me a lot of freedom. It was a rapidly growing multinational company. I worked for them in Salzburg, Austria, then in Paris and France, and then they transferred me to the American subsidiary. And in Salzburg, got more involved in selling. I really enjoyed it. It was really a thrill to sell a $50,000 piece of equipment and never know which direction that sale would go. But we have had a magic formula. We invited Austrian contractors to fly with us to Paris. We wined them and dined them. We demonstrated the machines. We introduced them to the brightest people in the company that were experts in what they were doing. And I was sort of the ambassador between those people, because I speak both languages. I speak German and I'm fluent in French. And it was easy for me to sell. And then they saw the talent, and they groomed me to become a sales trainer. And the onboarding process for the headquarters in Paris was massive. It was like 6 weeks of introduction to manufacturing, to service, to sales, to marketing, to sales promotion, to advertising. And I learned so much. It was like a university education the first year. And then I got really good in designing sales training materials. And I loved that. And I also loved hands-on training as well, and teaching trainers how to train. And then I came to the American subsidiary, and I helped the sales organization with distribution and with marketing, with advertising, with PR, with liaison to the headquarters in France. And the company decided to sell the American subsidiary and had everybody move to Racine, Wisconsin. And I said, my wife said, I don't want to go there. It's too cold. So I stayed in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I started my own company. And that year when I started my company, my twins were 2 years old. So I quit my job, started something that was very uncertain. And I remember the interest rates were very high. It was a risky environment. And I had a mentor, and I said, I don't think I'm ready. And the mentor said, well, what do you think is not ready? And he says, well, I said, the market is uncertain. The interest rates are high. The economy is difficult. And he said, it's always like that. It doesn't matter whether the market is ready. What matters is where you are ready. And I said, I'm ready. And in the first year, I doubled my salary. My income was higher, twice as high as my salary the year before. So it was a really great, lucky start. And I worked my butt off, was traveling all the time. So my wife asked me, is there anything that you can do where you don't have to travel?
Yeah.
And I said, sure, I can design a training course and sell it through direct mail. So I devoted my next 6 months of my life to doing that and fulfilling my obligations and doing sales training and maintaining the income. So it was a lot of work, and it paid off because the direct mail piece was successful. And then I did the math, and I thought, those are the expenses, that is the income, and the margin is very, very little. So how do I solve that problem? So I thought maybe I sell 2 courses with 1 direct mail piece, or maybe I lower the direct mail cost. So I decided on having a meeting with my graphic designer and said, what's the cheapest thing to print on? Because the direct mail piece is so expensive. And he says, you may as well use newsprint. That's the cheapest. And I said, well, why don't we create a newspaper, 8 pages, put in the same information about sales training, about effective sales, about the course, and we call it Personal Selling Power. And he liked the idea, and we designed it, and we sort of mimicked the layout of the Wall Street Journal with cover stories and illustrations, and even got an illustrator that illustrated the faces of the people like the cartoons in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
And it looked really good. And I sent out 25,000 copies, and it sold just as many courses as I did with the direct mail piece. So I doubled my margin, and And then something strange happened that I'd never anticipated. I got a call and say, here's JP, I'm with Liberty Mutual in Boston, and I just read this personal selling power publication, and I was wondering, can I buy 100 copies? So I was stunned, and I thought, how? I said, what do you want to do with it? And he said, well, I want to distribute it to my sales team. And I said, why? And I said, well, the articles are really good. I said, sure, I can get you 100 copies. And I made up a price. And then I got calls from 3M, from other big name companies at the time. And I sold 3,000 copies of my direct mail piece for like 60 or 75 cents a piece. So with the next issue, I thought maybe there's a new product, maybe there's a new revenue stream. It's not much, but let's milk it and sell more copies. And I sold 4,000 copies the next go around. And then I did volume 1, number 3. And then I had a conversation with my wife, and she said, I think you have another product here. And I said, what? I have the course, I have the direct mail piece. I don't know. What are you talking about? And she says, maybe you can get subscriptions. I said, what do you mean subscriptions? I'm not a publisher. I'm doing this is a marketing piece. And she said, well, you may learn it. You may be able to create another income stream. So I thought, why not? Let's test it. So I created a page of advertising that said, here's Selling Power. We're going to come up with 6 issues a year. Sent me $12 for a yearly subscription. And I said, if I get 500 subscribers, I continue. If I get less, I refund the money. So for those people that didn't grow up in that era, there was no internet. There was no sales publication. There was one magazine called Sales Marketing Management Magazine, and they started at the turn of the century. And it was the only competition. And I thought, why not start competing with them? And so I sent out 25,000 copies of that newspaper with that ad. And within 6 weeks, I got about 600 paid subscriptions. By the end of the year, I had 7,500. And then something wonderful happened. 90% of those that subscribed in the first year subscribed for the second year. And in the next year, we discovered that companies want to buy it in bulk. So UPS called us and say they want 1,000 subscriptions for their salespeople. What would be the price? So we had to make it up. And Cadillac dealerships, General Motors called us and said they want 1,000 subscriptions. They want to go to every Cadillac dealership. And, and all of a sudden we had like 20,000 subscribers, 50,000 subscribers, 100,000 subscribers, not a million. 150 was the top. And I remember my dentist and our pediatrician, we're good friends. They both said, we want to invest in your company. Here's $100,000 or $200,000, whatever you need. Grow the company fast. And I said, listen, guys, we're good friends. I appreciate the offer, but I don't know what to do with the money. And the revenues we generated with the magazine and with the courses was like deferred income. We sold 3-year subscriptions. And then I put the best ideas of selling power, like the first 12 cover story interviews, I put them together in a book, and I called it Super Achievers. And I made a deal with Prentice Hall to buy 10,000 copies. And I used it as a subscription incentive, but also I sold it in every copy of the magazine. And we sold in the first year about 20,000 copies of Super Achievers. And it had, on the cover was like Zig Ziglar and Ronald Reagan and Dr. Wayne Dyer, Dr. Dennis Waitley, Mary Kay Ash, Zig Ziglar, I mean, it was really an incredible book. I think you still can get it on Amazon.com today. So we recycle the editorial content in forms of books. And over the years, I created 16 books. And I remember one book was, I did it with Dr. Donald Moyne. He's a psychologist. And he showed me a book that he has created for Datsun. And it was called the Sales Script Book for Datsun dealerships. And I thought the idea was brilliant because he collected all the responses, the best responses to customer objections from all dealerships. He worked his butt off to create that book. And I said, why don't we make a generic book for sales, where we call it the Sales Script Book? Those are 420 tested responses to 30 of the most important and most difficult customer objections, like your price is too high, I have to think about it. Your competitor is cheaper, or they give better service, whatever it is. So we collected that, and we actually wrote that book over 3 weekends.
Wow.
And he says, let's sell it at a low price, publish ourselves. And I thought, with 100 pages, we're not going to get a publisher. They're not interested in a little book like that.
Right.
He says, like, let's go with paperback. Let's sell it for $9.95. And I said, no, let's go and put it in a 3-ring binder, get 30 tab dividers so you can flip through this very quickly, print it on red ink so people cannot duplicate it, and call it the Sales Script Book, the hottest, book for sales. And I remember going to the printer, having it printed, having it bound, and they're shipped like 300 copies to my office. I took one copy with me, and I was and it was in Richmond, and I stopped at a Denny's and had lunch on the way back, and I put that script book on the counter next to me, and I was eating lunch. Look at that, and there was a guy sitting next to me, and he says, "What's that?" And I said, "It's a sales script book." And he said, "What's in it?" And I said, 420 tested responses to 30 of the most important and most difficult customer objections. He says, "I'm a salesman. I need that. Can I look at that?" So I looked at it and I said, "Hey, tab number 4, price objections. There are 20 different ways to handle price objections." He says, "How much is the book?" I said, $99. He went to his wallet, gave me a $100 bill, and took it home. And he called me later. He says, "This is great. It helps me make me a lot of money." And then we went to a trade show a week later, and we sold $10,000 worth of books in 2 days.
Amazing.
And over the next 10 years, that book grossed us about $1 million.
Amazing. Amazing. A book that he wanted to sell for how much? $9.99?
Right. $9.95.
$9.95. And you sold it. And by the way, what I love about that story too is the gentleman who paid you $100 might be the best $100 he ever spent.
Exactly.
Right? Because everything we do in this role, everything we do in a sales training capacity is helping others.
Right.
And we're helping them help others.
Exactly. And we still sell the book today. We still sell about maybe 5 copies a month.
That is amazing. And how long ago was that book written?
That book is 20 years. Amazing.
That's a really inspiring story. And it's so interesting to me. And this is why I love this role, this profession, is that not only are we helping people, but we're living it too, right? I mean, you're still in sales, right? In essence, you sell sales, right? And it's just, to me, it's just so powerful. Now, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, and you've seen a lot of things change in 40 years. as you reflect on the 40 years, and incidentally, Gerhard, let me just pause for a moment. As I mentioned to you before, I'm never exactly sure how many folks that we have with us. So let me just pause and say hello to anybody who might be with us. If you're inspired to say hello, please do so. If you're inspired to ask Gerhard a question, I invite you to do so. This is a rare opportunity to speak to someone.
Today, the answers are free. So ask questions.
Exactly. Well, and I look at the wall behind you. I think, is that Arnold Schwarzenegger I see on one side?
Arnold is right over there.
Yeah.
And here's Bill Marriott up there, and Hugh Downs. Then we have Mark Benioff. We had Richard Branson. We had Mary Kay. We had Jay Leno. It's actually funny when Jay was a great interview. He's such a nice person. And when we send him the cover, the printed magazine, we sent him maybe 10 copies. And he had an Austrian assistant, and I'm from Austria. So I got a call from her, and she says, we just got the cover of Selling Power magazine with Jay on it, and Jay wants to talk to you. And so he came on the phone, and he says, how is my Austrian friend Gerhard? He says, you did such a great job with the Selling Power cover. You have to come and visit the show. And afterwards, we all go out for strudel.
That's Jay trying to talk with an accent.
Right. So I said, Jay, is this the day where you pick on Austrian immigrants? He says, no. I have many good friends like Arnold and my assistant, Maria. She is from Austria.
That is too funny. Now, as you reflect, what are some of the interviews that stand out in your mind the most?
Well, one of the interviews early on I did with Senator Sam Ervin Jr., because when I first came to this country, I listened to the Watergate hearings, and I thought, how is it possible that try to impeach an American president? That would never happen in Europe. You know, the democracy was a new thing to me. And here's Senator Sam Ervin Jr. grilling the Nixon henchmen and asking them questions. And I thought he was a brilliant he called himself a simple country lawyer. Mm-hmm. And he was on the Supreme Court of North Carolina. He became a senator. And I was fascinated by how smart he was, and how insightful he was, and how loyal he was to. And he talked about the fidelity to the Constitution of the United States. And I thought, I always wanted to meet this guy. So after he retired, I sent him a note, and he didn't respond. And I sent him another letter. He didn't respond. And the third letter, he didn't respond. And I thought, well, I try my tactic and make a phone call. And there was always the assistant, and she said he's not in. So I thought I got to figure out something else. And I wondered, he is a law office. He's retired, and the secretary probably goes out to lunch at noon. So I call at 12:15, and he picks up. And I said, Senator, I've been an admirer of yours since I came to this country, and I'd love to do an interview. My publication is Selling Power. There's nothing to do with law or politics, but what interests me is your view of integrity in sales. And he said, well, that's interesting. That may be a good angle, because I remember Bristol Myers had a slogan once that the secret ingredient in our medicine is the integrity of its maker. And I thought, wow, he's really smart. I want to, get to know him. And so he gave me a date, and I started studying him, because everybody I've ever interviewed, I read all their books, and I wanted to, ask intelligent questions that would be of interest to our audience. And so I traveled down to Morganton, North Carolina, went to the local library where they had a lot more stuff the day before, and then we met him. And I had a wonderful conversation with him and recorded the interview, did a cover story, and it was a highlight for me because I met an honest, God-fearing, quintessential, highly educated American who stood for his principles, and to me, it was an American icon. I've met other people since. I've had the privilege of having dinner with George Bush 41, a private dinner in Dallas at a rally where he spoke, and there were 8 people. There were guests of honor, and we had dinner with him. And that was, to me, a fascinating experience, how that little guy from Austria could meet with a former president. And we were allowed to ask questions off the record. And I asked him, how did you arrange the alliance for the Gulf War in such a short time? Like you worked for less than a day and got every country aligned with the United States. That is, to me, a great telemarketing job.
For sure.
How does that work? And he says, well, the State Department has briefing papers, there's a 3-ring binder for each country. There's a script for there's no room for small talk. And he said the whole thing lasted maybe 3 or 4 hours. And I said, how does it work? Helmut Kohl speaks only German. He doesn't speak English. François Mitterrand does not speak English, only French. And he said, well, we have translators on both sides. So it goes very fluid, very efficiently. And he was an amazing individual, very kind, very smart. And what I admired about him as well is that he did parachute jumps on his birthday up until he was 90 years old.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, and you've words like honesty, integrity, and when I hear about parachute jumps, that also means adventurous, energetic, someone who takes sort of life by the horn, so to speak. What are some of, if you had to put your finger on maybe through the 3 most important characteristics, let's just focus on sales.
Well, I think that it all begins with the mindset. You have to have a healthy, productive mindset, and the goal with changing your mindset or improving your mindset is you want to lead a life where you function optimally on a cognitive, psychological, and financial level. You got to be sharp in this business and stay ahead of the competition. You have to be resilient. You have to be agile. You have to be in command of your emotions and be positive and learn how to be more positive and interpret reality objectively so you feel good. Because selling requires a lot of confidence. And if you're not confident in your body language, then customers smell it, they see it, stay away from you. And you want to be financially successful as well, because you want to buy the things that you think you want, that you deserve, and take care of your family, take care of your children. So you want to make enough money so you can make a contribution to society.
How do we stay on this side of arrogance? Because there's such a fine line between confidence and arrogance. How do you differentiate the two, and how do you find that fine line?
Well, I think that when I interviewed Bill McDermott, he was the CEO of SAP, and he's now the CEO of ServiceNow. And he's one of the most brilliant CEOs I've ever interviewed. And he says, my motto is stay hungry and humble. And with humility, you go a lot further than by bragging. And those people that brag a lot, they have a higher need to be approved of. And to me, fear of disapproval is not a path to peak performance. Peak performance is the result of humility. I spoke to people who have won gold medals, and they're not bragging. They're humble. They say, well, that was a moment for me in time. There was a peak experience, but I'm still the same person I was before. It doesn't change me. So humility is something that can be cultivated. The other thing that I like the word awesome because it's related to awe. And I think in our Peak Performance Mindset training program, we ask each other a question: what makes you awesome? And it's amazing what people come up with, because to me, people are so resourceful and they can accomplish so many things that are inspiring. There was one guy who was in our training, and he called me and he says, I'm not sure I should participate in that training program because I fear of heights, and I don't think there's anybody else in this group. And I said, that course is really designed to transform people, and a lot of people experience fear, especially in selling. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. And he says, well, I said, describe your fear of heights. And he says, I cannot even step on a step ladder to change a light bulb. My wife has to do it. And we had that training in Vegas. That was before COVID. And he stayed on the 32nd floor. And he couldn't go out. He couldn't open the sliding glass door because he couldn't go out on the balcony and look around because he had a fear of heights. And we have one exercise. We give people the option to do a tandem jump with an experienced, parachute trainer. And we also had the captain of the Red Bull team. He has done like 20,000 jumps, and he has done 1,000 wingsuit jumps, and he was in 5 movies, and he spoke about his experiences. And after this guy from Canada heard him, he said, I want to do the tandem jump. Maybe that.
Wow.
And so he did it, and he felt so liberated. So that same evening, he went out to the balcony and had dinner there, and he did not experience anxieties. And the next day, he did another jump, and and after that, he went to Hoover Dam because 3 years ago he was at Hoover Dam. He wanted to see the sights and went out to that area where you see the whole lake and everything. And he couldn't go out because it was so high up. And he, enjoyed himself and took pictures. And then he flew home. And on the plane, he looked down. And he didn't have any anxiety. And then he came to home and said to his wife, that anxiety is gone. That fear of heights is gone. I'm so excited. And she said, well, there's a light bulb that needs changing. Can you do it?
That is simply like, good for you.
Right.
Change the lights now.
Right.
That is a great story. Talk a little bit more about that peak performance training. You still run that program, Gerhard?
Well, we have done an online training that was very successful because when you do online training, you get access to international instructors and experts. and we may do another one. I love that. I'm passionate about it. But a lot of people don't think that mindset training is for them because they have the illusion that they're really good enough. But I remember having a conversation with a CEO who attended our training, and he said, I thought it was, I wouldn't have done it without knowing you. I did it because of you. And I knew I had an instinct that I would get something out of it. And my feeling was that I was operating at 100% and doing that mindset training exposure to those different coaches. He says, I realized that I was barely operating at 50 or 60%. And so some of the experiences are so amazing because we get you into a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Porsche, McLaren, and you drive on the racetrack 160 miles an hour with a coach that's connected to you with a headset and take the turns. And then you have that epiphany that two things happen. One is that when you get ongoing coaching, your performance gets better. And secondly, the car can handle a lot more than your mind. And your mind needs to catch up with the possibilities offered by the car. And there's another thing that if you want to win a race, it's not about better acceleration or driving faster. It's knowing when to brake the right amount before a turn, wait as long as possible, and then tap the brakes, get down to the safe speed, and then accelerate out of the turn. So there's a lot to be learned through experiences that go beyond your regular comprehension. You can only then fathom that you have a lot more gas in the tank than you think you have, and you have a lot more power at your disposal than you think you have.
I think for as long as I live, I'm going to remember those words. You need to know when to brake and know when to accelerate. To me, those are such powerful words that can be applied in so many ways. And I think about what you were saying about the CEO who said, before, I think you said it was before he went to the training, right, he thought he was operating at 100%. The reality is he may have been operating at 100% given where his mindset was.
Exactly. And there are three levels to the mindset. Very quickly, the bottom level at the foundation is the implanted mindset, meaning that when you grow up and you have experiences with your parents or step-parents or close relatives that are involved in raising you, you develop a belief system that is a reflection of your parents, your caretakers. The second level of mindset is the imprinted mindset. Imprinted means that some people made an impression on you other than your family. So you get exposed to coaches, mentors, and teachers, to people like Wayne Dyer or Dennis Waitley or Tony Robbins or Zig Ziglar, and you adopt some of their beliefs and incorporate those beliefs into yours. And then there's the inspired mindset. And I remember when I interviewed Mary Kay, she said, so many people die with their music still unplayed. And I said, what do you mean? And she says, well, everybody is born with an instrument. And you need to learn what it is. And you need to learn how to play it. And you need to listen to your inner voice. And everybody has that inner voice. And we're not trained to listen to it. So we need to pay attention because that inner voice tells us who we are, tells us what we want, and gives us insights of what is our destiny? Why are we here? And we need to answer those questions. But the most fundamental thing, the foundation of your mindset, the belief system, those beliefs that you carry around that have been implanted by your parents, there's sometimes weeds and not flowers. So you need to learn how to distinguish the weeds from the flowers, and you continue to water the flowers and cherish those memories. But you need to work on taking out those weeds, stop watering the weeds, becoming aware of that. And we have a lot of, exercises like there's a mindfulness expert that teaches us, how to use our minds more effectively, how to sort of shut down, how to tune into our inner voice and listen to our self-talk. And then you realize that 80% of our self-talk is actually negative. And research shows that you need a ratio between 3-1 between positive thoughts and negative thoughts. So consciously, we need to work at being negative and creating a positive dialogue inside of our minds. And we can change that. We can be in charge of that. A lot of people, they get stuck and say, well, this is the way I am. I have those negative voices in my mind. I can't shut them down. But that means that they're actively struggling with those thoughts. So the mindset shift that's necessary is not to consider those thoughts your enemy. You created them. You can view those thoughts like you're the owner of a guest house, and those thoughts come in and they're guests in your mind. And you can let them go. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to shut the door on them, because then they find a way to go through the chimney or through the windows or a crack in the wall. They always come in, but you can treat those thoughts as guests and maybe ask them, where do you come from? And eventually those guests always leave. No thought is permanent. So you can emotionally or intellectually distance yourself and assume the perspective of the owner of a guest house and treat your thoughts as guests and maybe challenge them. In essence, we need to learn how to edit our self-limiting beliefs.
And what you're really talking about is taking control of our lives, accepting responsibility for our lives, and taking control and making the decisions that are in our best interest. Why? And I know you've helped countless people, and you've helped countless people find their peak performance, change their mindset. Why do you think it's so hard for so many people?
Well, look, the age that the time we're living in. This is the age of anxiety. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. There's COVID, there's global warming, there's political scenes that are unpleasant. There are wars going on. There's so many things happening in life that are beyond our control, yet they influence us because we watch the news, we become witness, and then we take that anxiety to bed, and it can make our lives miserable. So there are three types of clouds that are over people's heads. There is worry clouds that are personal, there are worry clouds that are business related, and there are worry clouds that are related to the general environment, to the world at large. And you need to analyze, appraise those worries and make a distinction between what you can control and what you can't control, personally, professionally, and globally. And then prioritize what you want to control, what you can control. But the things that you cannot control, you would be foolish to fight, or you would be foolish to feel helpless, because you can control it. It doesn't matter what you do, but the best choice you can make is to accept what you're powerless to change. And that acceptance leads to a higher understanding of what you can control, a better understanding, better insight, and then you can create a plan of action.
I say this in all of my workshops that I sincerely believe that we have much more control over our situation, over our personal situation, our professional situation, than we want to accept and admit sometimes.
Right.
And we tend to focus more on the things that we can't control, when in fact, if we sincerely can't control them, there's no point spending time worrying about that anyways, right? Because that's the stuff that's outside of our control. And like the workshops you run, we focus a lot on how can we actually increase our sphere of influence, right? By accepting responsibility for certain things that we want to sort of push to the side. So those words resonate with me a great deal. Gerhard, you've been so gracious with your time. I would love to indulge you for just another minute or two. Folks, if there is anybody online who cares to ask Gerhard a question, I invite you to do so. We're only going to be here for another few minutes. I suspect we haven't seen any questions because, Gerhard, your words have been so powerful and you've been on such a good roll. I suspect nobody wanted to interrupt you. You mentioned the times in which we live. And you and I met, I think it was the last event. We met in person, the last event before COVID. We were in Florida
in Orlando
at your conference. And it really has been quite a run for a year and a half. It's been very, very difficult for lots of people for many, many reasons. And it's interesting. I was having, in fact, I think I mentioned to you, we had a dinner party this weekend and we had some friends over. And one of the gentlemen was asking me, Chris, do you ever worry that either your training or your message is going to become outdated? Do you worry about not being relevant? Of course he answers yes, but I said, here's the thing. Sales processes, sales tools, sales methodologies, they change, they come and go, but people don't. And I think what we're talking about here is timeless. I feel like the principles that you're sharing are timeless principles because people are people. At the end of the day, people buy from people. Now that is a backdrop. As you look over the 40-year career that you've had, certainly with the magazine, are there certain things that you look at and say, these things have absolute, in fact, they're maybe more important now than they were before? And if so, what might those be?
Well, I think that the basic fundamental belief that I have is I get tremendous joy out of helping other people. And when I frame my life in a way where, I have a choice to be in this life just for me or be in this life in service to other people. And I like the idea of being a servant leader. I like the idea of making a contribution in helping people transform. And I get a tremendous amount of satisfaction. And that gives me so much energy that I almost, I remember having a conversation. I said, I wish we had more problems.
Which, by the way, is sort of a disruptive comment, right?
Right. Because problems are opportunities in disguise. I remember interviewing Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. He wrote the book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And he said, the only people I've ever known not to have any problems are in the cemetery. And the more problems you have, the more alive you are. And the more you get stimulated solving those problems. So if you want to contribute to a better life, help other people solve their problems, and your life is going to improve.
One of my favorite sayings, we are most fulfilled when serving other people. And I think for anybody in sales, that is probably the most important thing to take away from this entire conversation, right? I think unfortunately, sales professionals have a bit of a bad reputation. And there's a lot of salespeople out there that, sort of fit the pushy car sales person, if I can use that term.
But I want to dispute that a little bit. I want to challenge that, because the more I look around, the more I see an amazing amount of highly talented women doing a better job in sales than men, leading better sales teams that are happier and more productive, and earning a ton more money than I just can think on top of my head of 3 women in sales. One is Alice Hyman, who is a co-MC for Sales 3.0, and she has a new podcast called CEO Talk, Sales Talk. CEOs need to learn more about sales. I admire highly a woman called Sherilyn Castleman. You can look her up on LinkedIn, and she works for Sisters in Sales, and this is an organization that helps Black sales women be more successful in selling. And I recently interviewed, and I'm not going to mention her name. You're going to see she's going to do a keynote at Sales 3.0 on October 6th and 7th. And she's with Forrester. And she has out-earned last year her CEO. And she runs a sales team of 700 salespeople.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's incredibly well said. I recently had Samantha McKenna. I don't know if you know Sam's hashtag Sam Sells. I recently had her on this very program, and she's incredibly impressive, incredibly bright. And the advice that she gives sales teams and sales professionals is simply world-class. So I couldn't have said it any better. And I think to a certain degree, I feel like women are brilliant at really understanding, and they have such a servant heart, maybe more naturally in some cases than men. What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's hard to generalize. It depends on the person, but there is a study that showed that women outsell men. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's pretty close to 20%.
That's pretty astounding. Very, very astounding. Well, Gerhard, you've been, like I said, you've been such a gracious guest, and I know how busy you are. Any closing thoughts from you as we wrap things up?
Well, I think for those that are under stress in business, I want you to consider doing 2 mindfulness breaks twice a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And all I want you to do is close your eyes, and as you breathe in, you say, I'm aware of my body. And as you breathe out, you say, I'm letting go of all my tensions. And do it like 5 times. And it will change your physiology. It will change your psychology. You will feel better and probably sleep better as well.
So fantastic. Gerhard, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure hope to have you back again, and good luck with the upcoming conferences. Do you have a conference coming up that you want to just mention?
Yeah, Sales 3.0, October 6th and 7th. Go to sellingpower.com, get all the information.
Is it all virtual, or are you actually going to be?
It's all virtual. Yeah, we have 20 speakers, and it's going to be phenomenal because we use a tool called Brella.com. It's a conference platform that has like a Match.com ability to search for people who think like you and want to connect with you.
Excellent. Fantastic. Gerhard, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
Best wishes. We'll talk to you again soon.
All
Thanks
right.
all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.